Yes po, ma'am.
In this lecture, we are going to discuss about reading an unknown number of inputs. So in the previous lectures, while we were studying about the while loop and the for loop, we have seen how to take a fixed number of inputs, or we ask the user to enter a number and that is considered as a fixed number, and that number of inputs were taken and we were working on that. Now, what if we don't know the number of inputs that we want to take? In that case, we need to see how we can work with it in C++ programming. So that is what we are going to discuss in this lecture. So let's get started. So as I said, so far we have been dealing with fixed number of inputs. So in the previous cases, we have seen how to add all numbers from 1 till a fixed number and from 1 till a fixed number given by the user. So this was what we studied when we discussed about the while loop and the for loop. So there we saw that in one case we gave a fixed number and we were adding the numbers from 1 till that fixed number. So for example 5. So if we gave 5 as a fixed number, then we were adding from 1 till 5. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. And then in the next case, we asked the user to enter the number till which he wants to do the addition. So if the user has entered a number, let's say 4. So that 4 is treated as the fixed number, and then we added 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So that is what we have been doing so far, that is working with the fixed number of inputs. Now the question is, how can we add an unknown number of values? That means we are going to get values from the user, but we are not sure how many values are going to be there. It could vary from time to time. So in that case, how are we supposed to add those values? So we have to ask the user to enter some numbers, and we don't know how many numbers the user is going to enter. And then we add them using our program. So this is what we have to accomplish, and we will see how we can do this using C++ programming. So as I said, we have to keep reading the numbers until there are no more numbers to read. So we will ask the user to enter the numbers, and the user will keep on entering numbers from the keyboard. So as long as the user is entering numbers from the keyboard, we have to keep accepting those numbers, and then a time will come when there are no more numbers to read. And when is that? We will see that when we move ahead. So till that we have to read all the numbers and then we have to add them. So here is an example. So if the user enters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we ask the user to enter some numbers and the user enters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this case there are 5 numbers. So we have to add all these 5 numbers and we have to say that the sum is equal to 15, which is the sum of these 5 numbers. Or for example, let's say in another case the user enters just 3 numbers, like here 4, 1 and 3. So we have to add this 4 plus 1 plus 3 and say that the sum is equal to 8. So this is what we want to do, and let's see how we can do this. So here is a program that is going to help us do what we just explained, that is reading an unknown number of inputs. So here we have our header specified and we have our main function, and inside the main function we have two variables of the type integer, which are sum and value, and the initial value of sum is set to 0 and the value of this variable value is set to 0 as well. That means they are both initialized to 0. Okay, now here in order to read until the end of file, calculating a running total of all values read. Now what do we mean by this? Let's see. So as I said, we have to keep on adding the values that is given by the user. So as long as the user is entering something or a valid number, we have to keep adding it. So for that we are going to use a while loop. So here we are using a while statement, and we have studied about while in one of the previous lectures. So if you have not watched it, you can watch it first in order to understand how the while loop works. So in this while statement, we know that we need to have a condition, and as long as the condition is true, the statement or the block of code inside this while will be executed. So here, what is the condition? The condition is a cin statement. We see that we are saying std cin, and we are taking the value that is actually entered by the user. So we see that we are using the I stream or the cin as a condition inside while loop. So this is something different that we are seeing now. Usually we used to give some condition like we have seen in the previous lectures, but here we are treating the cin itself as a condition. Now we will see when it is going to be true. This means that as long as the user is entering a valid number, then we have to execute what is written inside the while block. So when is this statement going to be true? This statement will be true as long as the user enters a valid number. And what is a valid number? We see that value is an integer. So as long as the user keeps on entering a valid integer, this is going to give a true value. And as long as it is true, this will be executed. So inside this while we have this statement written here, sum plus equal to value, which is the same as sum equal to sum plus value. So whatever the user is entering, we are just keep on adding it to the variable called sum, whose initial value is 0. So suppose the user enters 1. So here we see that user enters 1. So this cin statement is true. So it will come here and it will add 1 to sum. So what is the initial value of sum? 0. So 0 plus 1, that will be added. And then it will come back to the while condition and it will check if the user is entering any other value again. So if the user is again entering a proper value, let's say the user enters 2, which is also a valid integer. So it will again come to this while loop and it will execute sum plus equal to value, which means sum equal to sum plus value. So the previous value of sum was 1. So now the user enters 2. So the new value of sum will be 1 plus 2, which is equal to 3. So this will keep on happening as long as this part is true. And when will it not be true? It will not be true when we enter an end of file value or if we enter an invalid value here. That means if it is not an integer, at that time this will become false and then we will come out of this while and then it will print out this cout statement sum equal to sum, that is the latest value of the variable sum, and then we print a new line. Okay, now we see here that in this while statement there is only one line after that. There is only one statement after this while. So that is why we are not putting it under curly braces. So if you are having more than one statement inside your while, then you need to put the curly braces. But if you are having just one statement, it's okay not to put the curly braces as well. Okay, so here the important thing is this condition over here. So we see that the iStream is used as a test condition. Why do I say iStream? Because cin is the console input, which is a part of the input stream. So this is used as the test condition. So we need to talk a little bit more about this to understand how this is working. So we will talk a little more about using iStream as a condition and what are the things that happen when we use iStream as a condition. So this was the statement that we had, that is a condition inside our while. We are using this iStream, that is cin, as the test condition for our while. So when we do this, when we use an iStream as a condition, the effect is to test the state of the stream. So we are going to test the state of the stream, that is the state of this std cin. So std cin will have a true value if the value entered here is a valid number. So if the stream is valid, that is, if the stream hasn't encountered an error, then the test succeeds. So as I said, if the user is entering a proper value here, which is an integer, and if it is not an end of file value, then this will always be true. So that is why it says the test succeeds. Now an iStream becomes invalid when we hit end of file or encounter an invalid input, such as reading a value that is not an integer. So this is the condition where this test condition will become false. So it will become false when this cin will encounter an end of file value. Now what is an end of file value? In case of Windows, if you press Ctrl plus Z on your keyboard and then press enter, that is treated as end of file value. And in case of operating systems like Linux, if you press Ctrl D and then if you press enter, that is treated as end of file value. So we will see that when we run our program. So if this cin is encountering an end of file value or if it is encountering an invalid input. So what is invalid input here? We saw that value was an integer. So if we enter a value which is not an integer, then it becomes an invalid value. So at that time, this will become false. So an iStream that is in an invalid state will cause the condition to yield false. So that is what we just said. Okay, so now let's just go back to our program again, since we have understood how using iStream as a condition works. Alright, so coming back to our program, we will take this program and we will run it in our Visual Studio Code to see if it is working properly and if it is able to read unknown number of inputs and add them together correctly or not. Alright, so we come to our Visual Studio Code and here I have that same program written down, and now we are going to compile this program. So the name of our file is unip.cpp. So let me compile it using the the G++ compiler. So we type G++ unip.cpp and we see that the program has compiled successfully and there are no errors, and here a.exe is the output file that is generated. So let us run the output file. So we type /a.exe and we press enter, and we see that the program has been executed. Now we see that there is a cursor over here. Now what does this mean? This is waiting for the input from the user. So it has come to this line and it is waiting for input from the user. This cin is trying to get executed. So it is waiting here. So let me enter some values. So let's say 1. Now in order to enter the next value, you can either enter it using space or by pressing the enter or return key on your keyboard. So let me use the enter key. So here I will say 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I've entered 5 values and I can enter how many ever values I want. Now after this 5, I want to stop. These are all the numbers that I want to enter. So how to come out of this while loop? So in order to come out of this while loop, I have to either enter the end of file value or an invalid value. So let me enter the end of file value that I talked about, which is Ctrl plus Z. So Ctrl Z. I press Ctrl Z on my keyboard and then I press enter. Now we see it came out of this while loop because it encountered the end of file value and then it printed the value of sum, which is equal to 15. So the sum of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 15. So we see that it is executed correctly. Okay, now let's take one more example. Let us run this program once more. Okay, so I have run this program once more. Again, it is waiting for the input from the user. So this time let me enter 2, and instead of giving enter, let me use space this time. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4. So these many values I want to enter. Now in order to break from this loop, this time I will enter a value that is not an integer. That means I'm not going to enter the end of file value, but let me enter a value that is not an integer. So let me enter a letter over here, a character. Let's say I entered N. Now what will happen? If I press enter now, we see that it has broken out from the while loop and it has printed the sum over here. So the sum
Hello po ma'am. So, allow me to share my screen. So, ask ko lang po kung kita na po yung screen. So, yes po. Yes po. Yes po. Sige po. Noted po. So, ito po yung code na kinapi ko lang naman po. So, no need to explain na po. So, I'll run the program na. So, I'll input numbers lang po. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, yung sabi po is yung una is yung Control Z para po ma-break yung code. So, ito po. So, lalabas na po yung value niya, which is yung 21. So, yung next po is yung mag-add naman po ako ng string. So, 1, 3, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, ito po yung string na i-add ko. O, ayan po yung sumagot. So, yan po yung result. Yan lang po. Thank you.
Hello po. Share screen ko lang. Okay, so kita na po ba? Okay, so in my code, gumamit na po ako ng namespace and same lang din po. Let's try to run po. So mag-enter po tayo ng integer, so like 8 and then 9, and as you can see, pag in-enter natin 0, it's still an integer like that, and then i-stop natin, Control plus C, yan po yung sum. So nag-run po. Now, if we run the code na may ano naman po, may maling input. For example, wait, like letter A. So, nag-run din po siya dahil mali nga po yung naging input natin. Okay po. That's it.
Hello po, good afternoon po. Share ko lang po yung screen. Kita na po. So, ayun po, kapag niran po yung program, pag nag-input po, tapos ni Control C po, saka po lalabas yung sum. Then, yung isa naman pong process para po ma-run ulit is yung mag-i-input ng value po. Hindi po ba nakikita?
Nasa code pa rin po.
Oh, sige po. Kita na po ba? Wala po. Wait lang po, share ko lang po. Eto po, kita na po. So, ayan po, pag kinontrol C po, makikita po yung sum na 15. Then, yung isa naman po, wait lang po. Share ko lang po ulit. Tapos yung isa pong process, ayun din po. Thank you po.
Ma'am, may concern lang po ako. Cellphone lang po kasi gamit ko. Pwede po bang mag-enter na lang po ako ng character para po ma-end po yung program? Hindi po kasi ako makakapag-control X. Pwede, ginagamit po kasi laptop po ngayon eh. Pwede naman po. Apo, thank you po. Share ko. Nakikita na po, ma'am. Ito, sharean ko po siya. Ito po yung code ko. Gumamit po ako ng using namespace. Tapos ito po yung input po. Tapos para po ma-end yung program, naglagay po akong character. Ayan po. Thank you po.
Hi ma'am, share screen lang po ako. Wait lang po. Kita na po. Ah, Ayan po. So, ito po yung aking code. Tapos, kapag ni-run po, wait lang. Opo. Ayan. Wait lang po, nag-ano pa. Ayaw. Wait lang po. Wait lang po ah. Nagka-compile pa. Ayan. Tapos, ayan. Tapos, kapag nag-input na po ako, tas ginawa ko po yung Control Z, ipoproduce na po or i-generate na po yung sum. Tapos, when I try naman po, gumawa po ako ng isa pang code na meron naman pong instruction. Tapos, need po na mag-input ng non-integer para mag-stop yung while loop. So, when I try this, meron na po siya. Ayun na po. Ayan. Meron na po siyang instruction kasi gusto ko lang po lagyan. Tapos, naglagay lang po ako ng, ayan po, opo, para lang po may instruction. Tapos kapag naglagay naman po ako ng character, saka po siya mag-stop kasi non-integer po siya. So, yun po. Yun po.
Hello, ma. Share ko lang po script. Kita na po. Then, control C. Then yung next naman po yung sa bigyan ng pang character. Then using space. Okay. Then we have a character. Thank you po. Papa.
Po. Wait lang. Share screen ko lang po. Ayan, nakikita na po, ma'am. Ayan. Enter ko lang po. Yung Control Z po muna. Ayan. Ayan po. And then, yung isa is hehe. Ayan po.
Ay, hello po ma'am. Share ko lang po screen ko. Ayan, kita niyo na po screen. Ayan, run ko lang po. Ayan, na-compile. Wait lang ma'am. Ayan. Ayan. Namin type lang. So, yung gagawin ko muna ma'am yung ano po, Control Z. Hintay ka na po mag-compile. Ayan. So, gumawa po pala ako ng namespace mo para malinis po tignan. Ayan. Para di gumawat ng ST. Ayan po. Lumabas po, 75. Gumamit po ng Control Z. Tapos yung isa naman po yung string. Ito po. Lumabas po 50. Kumana po ma'am. Thank you po, ma'am.
Afternoon po, share ko lang po screen ko. Ayan, kita natin. Kita na rin po yung out. Tapos, front ko lang po. Ito po muna yung using website. Ito yung sum. Next naman po yung sa string po.
Good afternoon. Ito po yung gamit yung ito po yung gamit na integer.
Good afternoon po. Share scale lang po ako, ma'am. Nakikita na po ba? Okay po. Gumamit po ako ng namespace, ma'am, sa code ko po. Tapos, opo. Okay po. Ito po pag Control Z. And then, yung isa naman po, thank you po.
Hello, ma'am. Rinig po. Share ko lang po. Ayan. Wait lang po. Ayan po. Kita po. Ayan po yung code ko po. Ay, yung ano. Yung sample code po na binigay niyo po. Tapos run ko. Ayan po. Enter value. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tapos control Z po. Yan po yung total sum. Tapos yung sa ano po. Ano po ba yun, ma'am? Yung ano? Isang line lang. Ayun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tapos control Z pa yung ma'am. Sum po. 15 po. Po. Text po. Control Z po. Ay text po ba? Ay, ganun po. Okay po. 2, 3, 4. Hello. Ayan po. Thank you po. Thank you po.
Stage ko. Ayan, kita na po ba? Ito po yung control C. Tapos, string. Ayan po. String. Apo.
Hindi ko po alam bakit di po gumagana yung control C, pero pag control X po gumagana. Siguro po ako. Salamat po.
Thank you.
Kita na po, ma'am. Kita na po.
Good afternoon po. Mag-share lang po ng screen. Ito po yung code. Tapos pag ni-run po, mag-enter ng value. Tapos using Control Z po. Ayan po. Tapos yung next naman po, using string. Yan po yung value. Thank you po.
Hi, ma'am. Ito na po, wait lang. Hello po, ma'am. Apo. Okay na po. Ginawa ko na po. Tapos parehas po. Ito po yung sa una. Tapos ito po yung pangalawa. Okay. Thank you po. Visual. Share ko lang po. Kita na po. Kita po. Ayan po pag Control C. Ay, Control C. Tapos kapag... Ay, wala ba? Wait lang po. Kita po. Oh. Nawala po yung ano. Opo. Pagka-enter. Wait lang. Debsi po.
Ito po pag Control Z. Yung sa string po. Ito po sa string. Thank you po.
Good afternoon po, ma'am. Yung sa string lang po magagawa ko po. Naka-tablet lang po kasi ko eh. Gamit po yung laptop for work po ni ate. Kita na po ba? Eto po, kita na po ba? Wait lang po. Thank you po. Ayaw po eh. Tinry ko din po kasi po naka-keyboard naman po ako na Bluetooth. Pero di po siya nagwo-work.
Hello po, ma'am. I share my screen po. Kita po ba, ma'am? Ayan po yung program. Pag ni-run na po, I use namespace po. From Z po, ayan po. And then, pag string po, thank you po.
Hello po, ma'am. Excuse me po. 1:30 po.
Wait lang po. Sharing screen po.
Hello po. Hello po. Yan po. Kacharian. 1:30 na po.
Tapos na yun. Naman ba dito present ka na po? Mabilis lang ito, ma'am, legit. Sorry po. Apo. Sorry guys. Mabilis lang ito, promise. Kita na po ba yung screen nyo? Compile ko na. Sige po. Ano, kita na po. Tapos pagka-compile ko po, i-paste ko na lang po para mabilis. Ano? Ay, tapos na. Control Z tapos ano po, para po mabilis naman. Sorry. Thank you po.
Ito po, 2:00.
Okay po.